Welcome to the 100 Guitarist Podcast. My name is Nick Millivoy.
And I am Jason Shadrick.
And we're glad to have you back with us today when we talk about the Rolling Stones.
This is a big one. This is a big one. People have been clamoring for this one. There's
a lot of guitar players.
DM after DM about when are you tackling the Stones?
Yeah, we can't get away from it. So
you knew they're on the list. They're on tour right now. Actually, I have a guitar student who went and saw them last night.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
How were they?
I don't know. I'm teaching his lesson later today, so I will find out. But let's just say dude is the perfect demographic. He's, he's right up there. But yeah, so today we're talking about the Stones, and we're gonna have a little different format for today's episode because there's just too much guitar history in the Stones catalog to really be exhaustive. Let's say, right, Nick?
I agree. I like that we're 5 episodes in, and this is the second episode where we said we're going to do things a little bit differently, but we mean
everyone might be different at this point. I mean,
but the Rolling Stones, when you talk about guitar and the Rolling Stones, we just decided we can't just talk about Keith Richards in one episode. Ronnie Wood, how many slots are the Rolling Stones going to take up? So we gotta knock it all out today.
Yes.
But before we do, I wanted to mention our first episode was about Andy Summers of the Police.
Yes.
And we got some Andy news this week that I wanted to chat about real quick. Andy has a new EP coming out. It's called Vertiginous Canyons.
Wow. Did you have to practice saying that in a mirror?
Yes. Yeah. I was like, Vertiginous Canyons. I tried to go in that real strong and confident. Comes out on the solstice on June 21st.
I'm sure purely coincidental.
Sounds pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I'm sure it's purely coincidental.
I listened to the first track and really dug it. It's all the things we talked about in that episode. So if you haven't heard the first episode of the 100 Guitarist Podcast, check it out there. And then other big news, maybe bigger, I don't know, is that the Police are releasing a 6-disc Synchronicity box set full of demos, some live stuff. It's 55 previously unreleased tracks coming out.
That's going to be crazy. That I'm
excited.
I'm very interested in. I'm wondering what's going to be the most surprising thing to come out of that.
I feel like the demos, I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like there's going to be stuff we learn about in the demos, like who wrote what part, that we might not know before.
I would love for one of these, like, hey, we're also putting out the stems. We're going to put out the stems for you. And you guys can remix them, hear what actually was played on all these. Like, how incredible would that to hear all the synth sequencer, Oberheim parts or on this or that. Like, that would be, that would be great. I'm hoping there's an acoustic version of King of Pain or something.
Ooh. My favorite Police intro is King of Pain.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Every breath you take, there has to be some kind of like.
Yeah, we could remix it to Every Breath You Take 24.
I would buy it. Yeah. All right. If you want to be an official 100 Guitarist correspondent on the show, it's easy to do. Just drop us an email at 100guitarists@premierguitar.com, or you can call, text, voicemail, however you wish, us at 319-423-9734. And basically just leave us a message about your favorite guitar player who you think would be on this list, on our 100 list. And chances are, if it's on the list, we might use it. We might do an episode, if people start leaving their favorite ones, we might do an episode just of a bunch of people who did not make the cut.
I love that.
That would be great. Like an all-call-in episode about your favorite guitar player who didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
That would be great.
But also check our social media, either me or you, or the Premier Guitar social media accounts, because we're just blasting stuff up there saying, hey, tomorrow we need opinions about this person.
Be ready.
And keep an eye on that because, we normally give about 24 hours notice there, and we get a lot of responses.
That's right. So today's episode is brought to you by Divided by 13. And recently at the NAMM show, we had a chance, Nick and I were there to go check out the Two Rock booth, which now Two Rock has acquired Divided by 13. Eli and Mac have taken that over, and they're going to be incredible stewards of those amps. And Divided by 13 amps are just, they're like, when I think of like a boutique amp, like a high quality, almost overbuilt to the point where it's like, they're nothing's going to go
Too
wrong with this
awesome?
thing. Too awesome, right?
Can
I've
an amp be
I've
too
reviewed a couple Two Rock amps, and I've played a couple Divided by 13 amps, mostly at that NAMM show, and they seem to have such a good fit with those two brands because their approach to building amps, no matter if it's more of a British or American thing, their approach is very, very similar. And so they also have, circuits with EL34s, EL84s, KT66, KT88. So they have pretty much whatever kind of either British or American flavor of amp you like. Chances are between Divided by 13 and Two Rock, they have something for you.
All right, so Jason, we got to get this going before we really get into it.
Oh man,
What's your favorite Rolling Stones record?
um,
That sort of sets the tone, right? Like everybody's answer to this. I mean, there's some standard answers, but there's so many Rolling Stones periods, so there's a lot of different answers. What's yours?
yeah, I would say my immediate reaction would be studio album. Would it have to be Sticky Fingers, but Exile being a very close second. And we
Okay.
touched on this in the Gilmore episode. I really got a deeper appreciation for Exile after Fish played it at one of their Halloween concerts. And because Fish, they play Love and Cup all the time. And then at this one show, they played Exile. And I was like, wow, okay, I need to go back and dig into that album more. And thank you, Trey and the fellas, for bringing me in to the early 70s Stones catalog, because that's where I became a deeper fan.
And just like in the Pink Floyd episode, I'll say that the thing that got me into Fish during my phase of being into Fish was that they played Love and Cup. I thought that was cool. And I was
Right?
like, all right, these cats, they're into some stuff that I like.
Yeah.
So
I love bands that have good influences, and Fish is one of those.
Yeah.
So what's yours?
For me, I just said that everybody has different answers, and this is not that exciting now. So my overall favorite, it does sort of change. It's like Catch Me in the Right Mood, and I'll say either Exile or Sticky Fingers is like my favorite. Normally Exile, but God, Sticky Fingers is a really good guitar record. My recent favorite though, and this isn't like a lifetime favorite, but the one that I have listened to the most in the past, I would say 2 years. It's a weird one. Black and Blue.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the blues record, right?
No, that's Blue and Lonesome.
Blue and Lonesome.
Black
oh, okay,
and Blue
okay.
is the interperiod between like the Mick Taylor period and Ronnie Wood, where there's there's several guitar players on there. Ron Wood plays on there, but also Harvey Mandel plays on Hot Stuff, Memory Motel, and I think one other track. Wayne Perkins plays on it, and if Ronnie obviously got the gig, but Jeff Beck jammed with them during the sessions for Black and Blue. Like they were bringing people in trying to figure out what to do next.
Mhm.
And for me though, the thing that I like about Black and Blue so much is like the weird like disco reggae, just the grooves. The grooves are super weird, and it's like they're kind of just like hanging out and jamming. And
Yeah.
I think that's
That
what
was the
it's all about.
album where since Mick and Keith produced it, that was the album where they were just like, did not have adult supervision.
I mean, did they have adult supervision on Exile?
I guess,
It was
but
a
at
different
least
thing though.
it was a
They were
different
really
thing.
invested on Exile,
Yeah.
and Black and Blue. It's like Mick has said that they didn't really care enough while they were making that album. But I think that's
Exile
what
or
I
Black
like
and
about
Blue?
it. Black and Blue.
Oh, Black and Blue. Yeah, it shows. There's like Rolling Stones loose, and then there's loose.
Yeah.
And
Well, we'll
that's
get to
Black
some
and Blue.
Rolling Stones list stuff
Yeah.
later in this episode.
Oh yes,
starting
for sure.
now.
All right. So next thing we're gonna do is, instead of going through, like I said, exhaustively through their catalog, Nick and I have decided we're gonna have we're gonna compile an official 100 Guitarist top 10 Rolling Stones guitar moments draft.
Mhm.
And
we have not discussed this.
We have not discussed this. Let's paper, rock, scissors. Who goes first?
Okay.
Ready?
Here we go.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. All right, you go first.
Oh, all right.
There we go.
So I picked mine. I don't think you have to do this. I picked mine in chronological order.
Oh no, mine's not. Mine's. I have a list. I have a list of a bunch of stuff here, just in case I need to make an audible. I'm telling you.
Okay.
What's your first
So
one?
the earliest Stones guitar song that is like, so these are not our favorite. These are our favorite Stones guitar songs.
Yes.
That have something guitar-y to discuss. All right. So for me, Beggar's Banquet as a whole, that's like almost one of my favorite Stones records, but it's so specific that it's not. So it's like I had to think about like Beggar's Banquet, which song on there is the guitar one, and
I think I
Parachute
have
Woman.
Oh, see, I was not gonna.
Yeah, Parachute Woman. It's like, okay, there's like the acoustic thing is there. Just like, Beggar's Banquet is all these nasty, distorted acoustic sounds that are just like so raunchy, just like distorted, kind of out of tune a lot of times, like recorded really weirdly. I love that so much about this record. And on that song, you get that going. Brian Jones playing acoustic, Keith playing electric, and then it's like the riff is awesome. The do 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 do. Keith's tone. It's like one of my favorite guitar players, other than Keith Richards, is Mark Rebo, and it's like I listen to this, I'm like, that cutting, just dirty, filthy, like staccato blues stuff that he's playing. That is like that precedes, like makes a case for that type of playing. That I think years later Mark Rebo would do, and I heard that, I was like, that. There it is. There's Keith just doing that. So Parachute Woman, that's my pick.
All right, that's a good one to kick it off. And I'm not looking to be like the most obscure, unusual, like this. And you'll see these choices probably reflected in the playlist that we put out. But my pick has to be the riff from Satisfaction. Like,
great choice.
I mean, like that's the Maestro FZ1. I mean,
man,
it's. Yeah, that to me is like the first, I think, super huge commercial, big, like, fuzz. Here's fuzz. Here's what it can do. Here's the power of a riff. It's a simple riff, but you play those 3 notes and everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows what it is. I mean, that to me, it's like you could not have a list of Stones guitar moments without the Satisfaction riff, for sure.
Also, it's like, a tone that is like you could just hear the first note of that and know what it is based on Keith's sound.
Mm-hmm. And whenever you're trying to fuzz, isn't that like those type of fuzzes? That's the testing to me. It's like,
oh yeah, like a Fuzz Right or a Maestro or like any of that era for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, Nick, you're up.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going up to Sticky Fingers.
Okay,
However, I'm not up to Mick Taylor yet. Sister Morphine. So for me, that song, that guitar, the guitar vibe on Sister Morphine is so deep. And for me, I saw the Rolling Stones twice. The first time was on the Bridges to Babylon tour, and that was the first time I heard Sister Morphine. And maybe I heard it on Sticky Fingers, but it's like I was only really listening to the hits. I was young. I was a teenager. And I got so obsessed with that song after seeing them play it. Keith is playing acoustic there, and that voicing of the A minor 7 that he's playing with the G on top, the way he's strumming, it's the simplest thing. It's just an open A minor 7 with, you've played it a million times, I've played it a million times, but we've never sounded like Keith Richards. No. The way he strums, the way he interjects with fills on there and just his rhythm, it's like that you can distill his personality into that one chord.
Yeah.
And then, the whole chord progression, obviously. But it's like just when he starts strumming the A minor 7, it sounds like Keith. And I love that so much.
And it's like because he strums so far up the neck.
Yeah.
It's like I was just watching when he was on Jimmy Fallon recently when he played, where he brings out that super cool 5-string classical guitar.
Oh, I don't know if I know that.
Oh, it was just on just before this last tour, like within the last couple of months, he was on Fallon. And he just pulls out, he has a guitar in his stand, he pulls out, and it's a 5-string nylon string guitar. And and it's tuned to open G. And he starts playing Honky Tonk Women, and he just raises his hand. He's like, yeah, you just do it like this.
And he sounds like Keith.
Sounds like Keith, man. And I'm telling you.
With Sister Morphine, the other thing about it that is like if you think, okay, no, that's not true. I can make it sound like that. Listen to the Marianne Faithfull version of Sister Morphine, which was recorded. It's a similar group of people. It's Mick Jagger playing acoustic instead, and then it's Ry Cooder on slide, Jack Nitch on piano, organ, and Charlie Watts on drums. Ry is also playing bass on that. So it's like, Jack Nitch and Ry Cooder are also on the Stones version. Yeah. And obviously Charlie Watts. But it's like the difference of hearing Mick Jagger strumming the acoustic part, which is like, it just feels bouncy and lighter, and then hearing Keith do it, and it gives that song such a heavy feel. Now, the other thing that I just dropped there is that Ry Cooder plays slide on this song. And it's, that opens up so much stuff. I could talk about this for too long, but I've always thought that sound of Ry Cooder playing on Sister Morphine is just like so deep for me. It's like, it's so reverby. Everything he plays is so perfect. Hearing him and Keith relate to each other musically there, it's just, I get flipped out when I start to think about, like, what if Ry Cooder was in the Rolling Stones? So
I'm telling you right now, this is going to be a Sticky Fingers heavy list. I'm telling you right now. All right. I can't believe it's taking us down this far, but Can't You Hear Me Knocking? Which is Mick Taylor's finest hour and Keith's best riff.
Can't argue.
Keith's best riff is Can't You Hear Me Knocking? I mean, when you crank that up and it's coming out of that one side of the speaker, you're just like, and it's so like the end of the space at the end of the fray of the riff is so clean. I don't know if that's something they tightened up in the studio or whatever, if they sliced some tape or something, but from the space between the end of that riff, the end of the guitar part, and when the band comes in, whatever that is what makes that song groove so hard. You know, it's, and the live versions are incredible. Like, I have not heard, well, I've heard some not outstanding versions of this song on like some live bootlegs, but generally, if I type that song into Apple, almost every version live is just going to be ripping. But even the studio version is
is iconic.
I mean,
yeah, I'm fine with the studio. Like, I hear that and I'm just like, this is everything.
That's Keith's best riff. That's Keith's best riff.
I wanna let somebody else chime in here. We got a call from
all right.
Our esteemed colleague, editorial director Ted Drozdowski gave us a holler.
Yep.
Here's our buddy Ted talking about Can't You Hear Me Knocking?
Hey, Jason and Nick. It's Ted Drozdowski. You guys know me, right? Hey, I'm calling in to say, man, one of my favorite Stone songs ever is Can't You Hear Me Knocking? I just absolutely love that that outro. It's just simply amazing, and could not be a cooler thing. The psychedelic aspects of it are just wonderful. I think it speaks to Mick Taylor's artistry. Mick is just really fantastic on that tune. The tone is wonderful. Even though it's got some repetition, it works as a marvelous hook that really kind of pulls you in, and it's just wonderful. The other thing I want to say about the Stones is that, oddly enough, from like 1968 to 1972 or 1973, they were probably the coolest American traditional roots rock band that was not from America. That whole period from Beggar's Banquet through Goat's Head Soup was really amazing. And it was just, to me, the kind of stuff you'd hear coming out of Muscle Shoals or one of the great studios in Memphis, even Nashville. And man, what a delightful period of the Stones. And, a lot of that, I think, is due to Mick Taylor. No offense to Keith, who I think is a marvelous artist and a great guitar player, but the duo of he and Mick Taylor was just wonderful, irreplaceable, foundational. Bye. It's been real.
All right. Thank you, Ted. Can't argue with any of that.
Oh, no.
God, Ted said it better than I can say. Just, that's a thing about the Stones. Like, of all the bands doing the thing, they got the whole picture of like American roots music at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So I'll admit to having some strategy going into making this list. I definitely overthought it. And I thought, all right, I want to pick 5. I want to really spread out all my thoughts on the Rolling Stones as much as I can. So I think that Jason's going to pick Can't You Hear Me Knocking. So I didn't choose it.
100%.
So instead, I picked the other song. I feel like there's 2 key jams that the Rolling Stones would play, especially in this period, but obviously at any period. But Midnight Rambler. Now I have a specific Midnight Rambler. It doesn't have to be this version. Obviously, the one we all know that everybody knows is the Get Your Ya-Ya's version. But there's like an official bootleg called The Marquee Club Live in 1971 that was out. And then it's like, I just realized when I was putting this together that it's not on streaming services anymore, but it is a thing that they did. It is out there. It is up on their YouTube channel. You can go find all this there, but you won't find this specific version on our playlist for that reason. But the version of Midnight Rambler at the Marquee Club, there's so many good versions of this song. But for me, if you watch that version, there's the weaving stuff between Keith and Mick Taylor that's just really on point, and the stuff that they're doing just in the rhythm parts when the song's getting going. And that song has chapters, right? So it's they're getting going, they're bouncing back in the rhythm part. But then when the song switches between the swing 8th part to the straight 8th, and Charlie starts, Mick Taylor takes off. Mm-hmm. And it's like the weaving. Then it's Mick Taylor and Mick Jagger on harmonica weaving their leads back and forth. It's the best stuff. And meanwhile, Keith is super punchy on his Dan Armstrong. They keep going, they're peaking, and then they get to the breakdown section, and it's just a debaucherous mess. I love it so much. They're not tight, they're so sloppy, and that's where all this magic happens. They're total highest level, and then it's just stretching out, and I love it. And it comes back together. They take it out and get it back together, and it's just it's like this epic piece. But definitely we'll put that video in the show notes, because that one is totally worth checking out.
My favorite Midnight Rambler jam was by Kevin and Scrantonicity from The Office when they played the Midnight Rambler jam in the warehouse. When Andy wanted to sit in. That's my favorite.
All right. Well, we have different.
No, I'm kidding. No, Midnight Rambler. Yeah, that's the jam.
Yeah, man.
That's the jam. I mean, from that era. Okay, should we make a roll? No more songs from
from Sticky Fingers. Sure.
But I think we'll get through. All right, next one up here is going to be from the Rock and Roll Circus, that version of You Can't Always Get What You Want. It starts with just Keith and Mick, and it's such a simple little vamp that they do that they just kind of work it up. Mm-hmm. It's it's I'm having a hard time finding the words to it's that's to me is the quintessential version.
Yeah, I get with that. I think that Rock and Roll Circus is also, speaking of things that are quintessential, that's the quintessential live Brian Jones Keith version. That's the quintessential, that version of the guitar chair.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Who's not doing well on this list is Ronnie Wood. He's not.
I'm going
Okay.
chronologically.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. Have we entered the Ronnie era yet?
No, because I need to do another Mick Taylor stop. The version of All Down the Line, really the version that they were playing on the 1972 tour. You can find it on the movie Ladies and Gentlemen, the Rolling Stones. Again, it's just like that's officially up on YouTube. There's another YouTube version that's called Rolling Stones 1972 Texas, All Down the Line, Mick Taylor's best version. That might be a little bit better. It's a little faster. I don't know. There's no better. They're just different. I shouldn't have even said that. Those two versions, just hearing that specific song, which is from Exile, and the way the band were playing it live at that period, the band is pushing, like they're just jamming. And it's like they're hitting it so hard. And Charlie's driving the bus, and Mick Jagger is riding the wave, and he's just the conductor. You know, he's like James Brown on these versions. But Mick Taylor just cooks over the whole thing. And he's playing slide on his Les Paul, and he just solos. He's basically soloing the whole time, and yet it's totally appropriate. The highest energy, so much tension, so much it's like total guitar climax, and they just keep going. It keeps escalating through the whole thing. So any version of that 1972 tour where they play, not that I've heard every version, but of the ones I've heard, and I would bet that they're all phenomenal. All down the line.
All right. I'm going to put on this list what I think is the band's last big hit. Do you have a guess what it would be?
One Hit to the Body? Oh, anybody seen My Baby?
No. Start me
I'm
up.
glad to see Bridges to Babylon represented here.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. Bigger bang. Let's go. No, Start Me Up. I mean, I don't know if they went into the studio and was like, hey, we need a song that can kick off our concerts.
You think that's bigger than Harlem Shuffle?
What's that?
Kidding.
Yeah. We need a song to open our concerts with, and it has to be as literal as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I got it. Start me up. Let's start up. You know what I mean? Like, that would not surprise me at all if that was how that song came together. But that riff, I mean, we all know the bar with the hammer on move that, for all I'm concerned, Keith invented second inversion triads. Just like Muddy Waters invented electricity. That move, like, if you just play that move, that opening riff to Start Me Up, you don't even have to play it in time, but you play it, and I've seen many a guitar student just like they light up at because that's the sound. Yeah. Going from a bar to the triad, that's the sound. And Start Me Up, I think, is probably the best example of that in the catalog because it's so recognizable. You slide that shape around to play almost that whole song, and it gets. I mean, I bet a ton of people were inspired to play guitar from that riff just as much as Satisfaction. I mean,
oh yeah,
because you got to think that came out in '81, so that was it. And you know, I've never seen the Stones, but I can just imagine like lights go down, and you just hear that riff, and the place goes bananas. Place goes banana.
And that riff, I've thought a lot of that. That was one that almost made it to my list. But that riff, especially, it's like when you think about like what makes the Rolling Stones sound like the Rolling Stones, and you think about a lot of the riffs, and there's so many great ones. Not all of them do the thing. Yeah. You know, like Jumpin' Jack Flash is a different thing that, for example, or like, I don't know, a more chord-based song, but it's like, that's the thing that Keith does. Like you said, that hammer on second inversion to first inversion thing. Which, I guess we should mention, because I mentioned him before. He learned that tuning. You know where he learned that?
Ry Cooder.
Mm-hmm. But like, Rise Effect on the Rolling Stones, that's just that one thing. Like, what a world that like Keith created with that. And I think Start Me Up is the best example of that. I've taught a lot of guitar students Start Me Up as an example of like, well, you want to do the Keith thing, you go here, and then Brown Sugar's next, but it's like Brown Sugar's way harder. It moves all around the neck.
Yeah. All right, wrap it up. Last one.
All right, Keith and Ronnie now. Now, I would say...
Well, Keith and Ronnie Start Me Up, right?
Keith and Ronnie start me
Yeah.
out. Yeah, so I'm just saying we're in this Keith and Ronnie
Right.
era.
Mm-hmm.
I would say my personal feeling here is like the Keith and Ronnie era is really the undersung era of the Stones, because it's such, it's the later period of the Stones. He's been in the band for 4.5 decades or something.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, the thing that I wanted to just like encapsulate that in one song, you picked "Start Me Up," I picked "Just My Imagination."
Oof.
The version right off "Some Girls," any live version is great too. It's just Mick Jagger is also playing guitar on there, so it's all three of them. But you can just hear the musical conversation, specifically the rhythmic conversation between Keith and Ronnie. And I think that's the thing. It's like, God, it's so exciting to talk about Mick Taylor. And, that story is like too much to go into of like, Mick just being in the band for a short period of time. But like, the interesting thing is they went from like Keith was playing leads. Keith played leads on Sympathy for the Devil. Keith is playing leads. Then they get Mick Taylor, and it's like Mick is the lead guitar player in the Stones, and is a completely different sounding player than Keith. And then they get Ronnie, and they kind of sound the same.
Yeah,
right.
Ronnie,
and it's like that's such a big thing of the later period of the Stones, is like having two guitar players that can do the same thing. Not exactly the same, but like they have such a rhythmic hookup. And I think Just My Imagination is kind of where that clicks for me. And after, like, that sounds like modern era of Stones. Modern being everything since Some Girls.
Yeah, right. Okay, a couple things to wrap up this here before we get to our voicemails. Number one, has any band in the history of time, and if anybody can name one, I would love to hear it, has had a 4-year run like the Stones from 68 to 72? So that's Beggar's Banquet.
Okay, are we talking about the Beatles, though? Like, are the Beatles in there?
But, I mean, that's literally it, right?
Yeah.
It's Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, Exile. Like,
I mean, Zeppelin. Can you say Zeppelin? I mean, I'd take the Stones. I'd say the Stones period was.
I mean, that period.
I'm just a little bit
there.
more of a Stones guy than a Zeppelin guy. But
I am too. We'll get to Jimmy Page. He'll get his due.
Yeah.
When we get around to him.
But somebody who's a bigger Zeppelin person might say, "Well, you're forgetting Led Zeppelin." Van Halen. I wouldn't say no. It's not as strong.
Not as strong. I mean, no.
They're all over the place.
They're a little all over the place. So that was number one thing. Number two, I wanted to mention gear.
Oh yeah.
We have. It's literally.
We don't have. You have.
We don't have. Yes, collectively, we have the Rolling Stones Gear Book. Whoop, written by Andy Babowick.
God, it looks awesome from here.
And Greg Prevost. And it's pretty exhaustive. Like there's a million pictures. When this came out, we did like a little excerpt in the magazine with some of the more interesting things here. But it's, if you really want to just find out how all this stuff was made, I mean, you can open up. Oh, here's a 12-string from 1970, a Martin 12-string. A lot of 5-string guitars in this book.
I love hearing Keith on a Martin 12-string.
So if you want to, one of my honorable mentions was all the acoustic guitar work on Wild Horses.
You have one more. I picked 5. You picked 4.
My 5th one, I think, will be Wild Horses, because you got a 12-string tuned to open G. You got Mick on acoustic in Nashville tuning, which is where you take the lower strings and swap them out and raise them up an octave. That might be their finest acoustic moment. A lot of people think that song's just like a nice little strummer, and it can be, for sure. But the way those parts sound like those parts is because of all the octaves going on. All the jangly octaves going on that one. So yeah, that'd be my top 5. So
that
my
was
5.
Something when I picked my 5 that I was sad about. I was like, I want to capture the acoustic thing, like Sister Morphine does it. But anyway, I think that Wild Horses is such a great pick to like. That is also such an important part of the Stones. Is just the acoustic sound.
So to recap, your 5: Beggar's Banquet, Parachute Woman, Sister Morphine, Midnight Rambler from the Marquee Club, All Down the Line, 1972, and Just My Imagination. Mine is Satisfaction, Can You Hear Me Knocking, Can't Always Get What You Want from the Rock and Roll Circus, Start Me Up, and Wild Horses, which is a far superior. You're just too bougie and like cork sniffer. Mine is like that's what they're gonna. You go see a show and they knock out my 5 tunes. I can go home after those 5 tunes. I'm happy. I'm happy. But if they play Parachute Woman, Sister Morphine, Midnight Rambler, all down the line in Just My Imagination,
I'd be pretty dang
seats
happy.
are going to be flying through the crowd. There's going to be a riot in that place. So it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think there's a good chance. I mean, getting Parachute Woman would be sick. But I think
Yeah. If you get Parachute Woman in the context of a real, sure, that would be great. But if they're playing your 5, which I know wasn't the thing, if they're playing your 5,
that wasn't the assignment.
People are all right. Let's get to some calls. Let's get some voicemails.
So we got a text message or an email from Glenn Mercer from the Feelies. They were recently featured in Premier Guitar. I wrote a piece on the Feelies. If you don't know the Feelies, they're really great. They just did this Velvet Underground record. They came out last year. This year.
Mm-hmm.
Came out last year. So here's what Glenn says. He says, as far as picking a particular song to illustrate the Stones' guitar interplay, it's nearly impossible to choose, but for now, at least for today, I'll pick Jumpin' Jack Flash for several reasons. It has a totally unique sound, especially for the drums and guitars. It's well known that they used a cassette recorder for its built-in mic to provide an overdriven and compressed sound. The fact that Keith played an acoustic guitar makes it even cooler. This song has such great energy and rhythmic drive, and it never fails to provide a boost, especially when the maracas kick in. And the second guitar's fills and solo blend together perfectly in the mix, with the driving bass tying it all together. I could probably pick better examples of guitar weaving, as Keith calls it, but this one with the picture sleeve 45 and radio airplay really sums up the band for me in a lot of ways.
There we go.
I would say that Jumpin' Jack Flash is the Rolling Stones song I've performed the most in my life.
Oh, man. I have
That's
not.
the riff I go to. No?
I think for me, it'd probably be Beast of Burden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I performed Jumpin' Jack Flash at my wedding with our next caller, who is a good friend of mine.
Oh, wow.
Chris Forsyth.
I thought you were going to say Keith Richards.
Yeah. I didn't tell you about when
You didn't
Keith
tell me.
Richards
You
came to
left
my
that
wedding.
out. Yeah.
All right, so here's what Chris has to say.
Hey, Chris Forsyth here, calling in from Philly. And
Again.
if you held a gun to my head, I'd probably be forced to tell you that Keith Richards is my favorite guitar player of all time. But he's sometimes not my favorite guitar player in the Rolling Stones. So I'm here to talk about Mick Taylor. I think anybody would benefit from checking out every live recording they can find of the Stones in 72 or 73 when Mick Taylor was at his peak. The Brussels Affair is a really good one. There's many. But there's this recording from Perth, Australia, February 24th, 1973, which kind of demonstrates why the Stones are/were the world's greatest rock and roll band, and also possibly the worst rock and roll band in the world, all in one song. So if you check it out, I think this recording was made in an afternoon show. I've seen pictures. It was like a cricket ground or polo ground or something. No cover. I think it was 95 degrees out, sun shining down, 2 o'clock in the afternoon show. So, who knows how much sleep those guys had gotten. But, and I'm sure the monitor situation was not ideal, but it takes them about 2 minutes in the song to find the one. So
It's
they sound like a high school band trying to get all on the same page for until the second chorus. And it's when Mick Taylor, who appears to be laying out that whole time, I mean, he's the most musical guy in the Stones, and I think he was probably like, I'm not touching this. And then you hear him come in a little after the 2-minute mark, and it just snaps the entire band into order, which is not what you usually think of a sort of Snake Charmer blues wah-wah lead doing for a band, but that seems to be what happens. And then he's more or less just ripping the entire rest of the song, just playing lead. Jagger sounds amazing, but yeah, these just like totally burnt wah riffs, And yeah, I mean, it's like Hendrixy kind of super psychedelic, super drug damaged, super ripping. I mean, it speaks for itself, and it helped them find the one.
Thank you, Chris, for calling in. Jason, did you listen to that?
I did. He described it pretty accurately. Like, if
Yeah.
I were to just say, "Hey, check out this track," you'd be like, "Who is Mick Jagger singing with?" Because is he sitting? Is this like? Did he like stumble upon a bar band?
Yeah.
You know, for the first half of the track, and then like the rest of the band walked in or something. You know, but yeah.
It's completely wasted sounding.
We have to put that link definitely down below.
Absolutely.
And
I think that's an essential part of, the Stones story is the triumph that comes after hearing something like that.
That's right. All right, we did it. We got through it. All 10 of our picks.
I could do 2 more of these episodes.
I could probably, we might hold on to this format for future.
I mean, 2
for
more
future
Rolling
acts.
Stones episodes like this. Like,
Oh,
let's
yeah.
go.
We're not doing that. But if you want to hit us up, get us at 100 Guitarists. That's 100 Guitarists at premierguitar.com. Tell us how much our lists are not good. And you can voicemail or text us at 319-423-9734 to hit us up. And next week, who are we talking about next week?
Heart's Nancy Wilson.
There we go. All right. We'll see you next week.